Sunday was absolutely my favorite day of the week. And the reason being is the Sunday gravy tradition that our family has. And I grew up on a block where my 2 aunts and my 2 uncles and 6 cousins lived right down the street. So Sunday morning, like clockwork, my mother would start the gravy. And the reason why we call it gravy is because when the immigrants came from Italy, mostly southern Italy, they were normally working class people. When they came to the United States, they were looking for an English word that best described this delicious Italian sauce. And because it's slow cooked with delicious meats and the drippings would flavor the sauce, they felt that gravy was the best American word to use for the sauce. So our family traditionally calls it gravy. And so that's what we do. And so while my mom and dad took us to church, this delicious sauce was simmering for a good 8 hours in our slow cooker, and we couldn't wait to get home to enjoy this pasta meal. It is fantastic. And while we were sitting at the table at 3 o'clock enjoying our Sunday gravy, so was our relatives down the street. And we all finished about the same time, and we'd pour outside and enjoy each other's company and hang out and talk about the week and what we had to look forward to for the upcoming week. Who wouldn't enjoy this delicious feast? I know we certainly did. Super fun, super delicious, and it's just an ode to our Italian heritage. Make sure to top your pasta with some delicious pecorino romano or Parmesan cheese. You can add a little bit more parsley, and we always served our Sunday gravy with some homemade giardiniera just to add a little bit of heat. You can't make a good Sunday gravy without some garlic and Italian parsley. I love garlic, so I tend to use a lot of it in my gravy. I use 8 cloves of garlic, and the Italian parsley, I chop it as well, and we're gonna saute the garlic in some really good olive oil. So let's go ahead and dice these pretty fine. I handle my garlic a little bit differently than my mother. She would just leave the garlic cloves whole and let them simmer in the oil just until the garlic got soft and golden, and then she would literally pull the garlic out. Me, I love my garlic in there, so I do things my own way. That's why everybody's sauce is just a little bit different. And this pasta sauce is gonna slow cook for about 4 to 8 hours. So this garlic is really gonna totally melt into the sauce. Okay, there we go. Perfect. Okay, now for the parsley. Okay, let's start dicing it up. I don't mind a little bit of stem and my parsley. I'm so used to making such big batches of gravy that this saves on time. Just chopping off the heads of the parsley. There we go. That looks like plenty. Smells so good. Something you can add as well. I tend to not add it because it adds a little bit of sweetness to my sauce, but you can add some basil, some fresh basil, and even a little bit of oregano. So make your sauce your own. One of the funniest memories of making sauce with my mom, my Uncle Richard would show up, my dad's brother, and insist on putting a pinch of sugar in the sauce to neutralize the acid. She was so opposed to that, and they would love fighting over the pot of gravy on whether to put some sugar in there. Either way, the pasta's gonna be good. Okay, now let's head to the stove. To make a good Sunday gravy, you need to have some really good, delicious meats because the drippings are gonna add deep, robust flavor to the gravy. And in my house growing up, my mother used to love browning neck bones. Sometimes I do that, but today I am going to do some Italian sausage, and you can use regular or hot. Today I'm using regular, and we need to brown the meat. I'm also going to brown some sliced pork ribs. I love the amount of meat on the ribs and the flavor that it adds to the gravy. So we're going to go ahead and let that brown. And the reason why you need to pre-brown your meat when making your sauce is because you want to get that Maillard reaction. That's that caramelization on the outside of the meat. It's going to make the sauce more flavorful, and it's also going to help the meat hold its shape in the gravy, because don't forget, this gravy is going to be slow cooking for about 4 to 8 hours. Okay. These are perfectly browned, and don't forget they're going to continue to cook in the gravy. So now let's add our pork ribs. You don't want to overcrowd the pan. But you want to make sure that they get browned evenly. Okay, the meat's good and brown. Let's get them transferred so we can start sauteing the garlic and parsley. Perfect. So just coat the bottom of the pan with your olive oil. And this is a real fast step because you do not want to over saute your garlic. You just want it to be a nice golden color, still soft, very fragrant. Takes about a minute. Put your heat on medium. And I just go ahead and put my parsley in there as well. This is really, by sauteing the parsley, is going to add a depth of flavor. And just move that around. Sometimes the parsley will absorb a little bit of the olive oil, so when I need to, I add a little bit extra. The garlic will still be soft. You don't want it to turn brown because that's when it becomes bitter. It looks perfect and it smells perfect. Let's shut off the flame and remove it from the heat. I like to use some pureed ground tomatoes and tomato sauce. It makes a perfect consistency of a sauce. You've got the smoothness, but some chunky tomato pieces in there. I love that. Well, I've learned over the years that it's super easy to make sauce in a crock pot, and I discovered that when I got a new oven. I got my Wolf oven, and it just heated so differently than my previous oven, and I noticed that if I didn't stir the sauce often enough, I would get a burn on the bottom of my pan, which you don't want to ruin the flavor of the sauce that you worked so hard to make. And also, it's never fun to clean up a pot that has burnt food on the bottom. So I said, hey, I've got this wonderful crock pot. Let me see how my sauce turns out when I use that. And it has been one of the best decisions I've made, because you don't have to worry about burning your pan, and you don't have to worry about stirring your sauce so often. That frees your hands up to do other fun things like play with your kids or making a delicious salad or garlic bread. Okay, so I've got all my tomatoes in the crock pot, and now let's add the garlic and parsley. There we go. There we go. Mix that all together. I like to cook my pasta sauce on low and slow, about 8 hours. But you can, do it for 4 hours. One of the tricks I do too is if I'm making the sauce for a party for another day, I might par cook it. I might cook it low and slow on 4 hours, and then the day of the party, that morning, I go ahead and put it back in the pan and do low and slow for another 4 hours. This gives you a lot of flexibility. All right, so I'm gonna set my slow cooker on, and we're gonna let this set up for about 15 minutes before we return the meat to the pan. So I've let my sauce set up for about 15 minutes. So I'm ready to add the meat. And you don't have to chop up the meat. What's gonna happen is this meat is gonna be cooking for about 8 hours on low heat, and the meat is going to be fall off the bone tender when the sauce is ready. And growing up, my mother loved to put neck bones in the sauce, and she would tell stories of how, gravy started with the Southern Italian immigrants, probably in the early 1900s. And the families were trying to figure out a way during very, scarce times on how to be able to enjoy meat in their meals. And so this Sunday gravy was the perfect opportunity because you can put cheaper pieces of meat, tougher pieces of meat in the sauce, and it's going to be cooking for, 4 to 8 hours, and it's going to be delicious. And neck bones were really inexpensive and imparted a lot of flavor. So let's let this slow cook for about 8 hours. Now, if you're not using a slow cooker and you're making this pasta sauce right on the stove, you just have to cook it still low, about 2 to 4 hours, but you're gonna need to make sure to stir the sauce very frequently. Well, this sauce has been cooking for 8 hours on slow. I'm gonna give it a taste, see how I wanna season it up. Could use a little bit of salt and pepper. So do this to taste. I like to use fresh ground black pepper. And our house likes it a little bit hot, so I'm gonna add some crushed red pepper flakes. You can even saute those in when you're sauteing the garlic and the parsley. A little arrabbiata. Stir that up. Oh, the texture is perfect. Nice and velvety. Perfection. My grandma Vivarda would be proud. My mama too.